Visitors from Oz. A short story by Robert J. Evans. Dorothy was not too happy. She'd been grounded for spinning tall tales, as Aunt Em had said. Oh, if only grown-ups weren't so stubborn, she thought. I suppose at a certain age they give up their child's imagination and lock their childhood memories up in the toy box with all their old toys. Well, I may be grounded, but I still have my so-called imaginary friends. With that, her old friend the Scarecrow suddenly appeared right in her room. "It's you!" she cried, jumping up to hug him. "Oh, I'm so happy to see you. I was just thinking about you, and here you are in the flesh." "Well," said the Scarecrow, smiling, "not exactly in the flesh. In the straw might be a more appropriate term." "Dorothy, who are you talking to in there?" Aunt Em called from the kitchen. "Oh, no one," replied Dorothy, opening her door slightly. "I'm just playing with my dolls." "Oh, is that so?" shouted the Scarecrow in mock anger. "So I'm just one of your dolls." He then proceeded to chase Dorothy around the room, and when he caught her, he tickled her unmercifully. Her uncontrollable laughter brought Aunt Em's loud reprimand. "Dorothy, I don't know what's going on up there, but you're certainly making an awful lot of noise for just playing with your dolls. Your Uncle Henry is taking a nap, and you'll wake him." Dorothy turned to the Scarecrow with her finger to her lips. But then Aunt Em rapped on the door as she sternly entered the room. "You'd better settle down," she said angrily, while at the same time bending down to pick up several straws from the floor. "Where did this mess come from?" "Mess?" said the Scarecrow loudly. "Who said that?" said Aunt Em, her voice rising. She was clearly startled. "Oh, I think it was just the wind," replied Dorothy. "A big bag of wind, actually." Aunt Em was now glaring at the girl. "What did you call me, young lady?" "Oh, not you, Aunt Em. I was just referring to that Scarecrow out there in the field," she said, pointing out the window. "He looks like a big bag in the wind." "I'll get you for this, Dorothy," Scarecrow whispered harshly in Dorothy's ear. Of course, Aunt Em could not see Scarecrow, and she didn't hear him whisper, but she sure did sense something unusual. "I'd best get back to the kitchen," she muttered. "Now you behave yourself, Dorothy. I don't want to hear any more commotion. You're skating on thin ice these days." After Aunt Em left, Dorothy placed her hands on her hips in mock anger and spoke sternly to Scarecrow. "See what you've done? You got me in trouble again, didn't you? Didn't you?" she said again as she pushed him onto the bed. "Okay, that does it," said Scarecrow as he jumped up and chased the girl around the room again. "I'm going to have to teach you some respect, young lady." Dorothy started laughing so hard she couldn't run any more and collapsed in a heap on the floor. "All right, you win," she panted. "Let's call a truce." "Well, maybe," said Scarecrow. "I'll think about it." "Oh, showing off your new brain, eh?" she retorted. "Oh, that definitely is it," shouted the Scarecrow. "This time I will show no mercy." Suddenly, there was a knock at the door again. Only this time it was a timid knock. It certainly wouldn't be Aunt Em this time. Dorothy motioned Scarecrow to be quiet as she opened the door. And who would be standing there but the Tin Woodman? "Quick, let me in, Dorothy," he said with some alarm. "I tried to appear in your room, but somehow I appeared in your Uncle Henry's room by mistake, just as he was opening his eyes from a nap. He saw me, I'm certain of it. I assumed I would be invisible to him, but I wasn't, because he looked at me like he had seen a ghost." No sooner had the Tin Woodman said this when there was a quick rap at her door and the sound of Uncle Henry's agitated voice. "There is something going on here, Dorothy, and I want an explanation right now. Open your door this minute." Dorothy quickly opened the door and came out into the hallway. Meantime, Uncle Henry peered through the open door as if looking for someone. "Either I saw a man made of tin right in my own bedroom or I'm losing my mind. Not only that, but I saw him going into your room. You'd better start talking, young lady." Dorothy was almost crying, not with sadness, but with relief that Uncle Henry had actually seen one of her friends and would finally know she was telling the truth. "I've tried to tell you and Aunt Em all along, Uncle, but you wouldn't believe me." At that, the Tin Woodman and the Scarecrow, and now the Lion, became fully visible behind her. Uncle Henry's eyes grew as big as saucers as he mopped his brow with his large red hanky that he quickly pulled from his pocket. "I need to sit down," he said, his voice barely a whisper. He walked right past her friends and sat on the edge of Dorothy's bed, looking as white as a sheet. "This will give Em a heart attack," he said, half to himself. As if on cue, heavy footsteps could be heard as Aunt Em again appeared at the top of the stairs. "Now what's all this talking?" she said, almost out of breath. Her mouth dropped open as she took in the scene of the group at the door and Uncle Henry sitting pale as a ghost on Dorothy's bed. At that, Aunt Em opened her mouth as if to speak, but then promptly fainted. The Tin Woodman rushed to catch her as she fell. "Quick, pull that chair behind her, Dorothy," he said as he gently lowered her into it. Meanwhile, Dorothy dabbed a damp washcloth around her aunt's face to revive her. When Aunt Em came to, she was shaking. Dorothy wrapped a shawl around her shoulders and gave her a drink of water. She then, matter-of-factly, introduced Aunt Em to her friends. Meanwhile, Uncle Henry just sat, staring into space. As Uncle Henry and Aunt Em became accustomed to the scene before them, they began to accept the reality of the situation and to realize that Oz was indeed a real place, and not just the figment of a little girl's imagination. Uncle Henry spoke first. "Em, we need to face facts here. We're simple country folk, and no one's going to believe us any more than Dorothy. We'll have to keep it all a secret, or we'll all be locked up together. Unless," he said, looking at Dorothy's friends, "you fellows want to testify on our behalf to the rest of the world." The Tin Woodman and the Lion and the Scarecrow all looked at each other, shaking their heads. "No chance of that," said the Tin Man. "The rest of the world just isn't ready. The American government would take us into custody, and no one would ever see or hear from us again. They do that with any alien forces they come across. Children who've seen us, and many have through the years, don't question our identity. They just accept us and love us for who we are, whereas government people are afraid of us, of anyone they don't understand or feel they can't control. It undermines their authority and feelings of security. They want to feel they're fully in charge. People like us make no sense to grown-ups. Our image doesn't fit in with their concept of reality. Of course, as I said before, children accept us readily. Dorothy didn't doubt us a bit when she first met us." Uncle Henry, who was now getting back to his old self, said, "I doubted you as much as my dear wife did, and we were getting quite angry with Dorothy for insisting you were real." Lion, who'd been quietly taking this all in, said, "It's not unnatural for parents to be upset with their children when they talk about imaginary friends. They want their children to grow up firmly entrenched in the real world, not in some fantasy reality. But as far as the children are concerned, these friends are real and provide great companionship. The parents have no right to discourage them. Children are a lot more sensitive than grown-ups and see and hear things that adults are totally unaware of." "Well, I'll never doubt Dorothy again, I'll tell you that," said Aunt Em, absently fanning herself with the end of the lion's tail. "I still can't believe I'm talking to a lion and a scarecrow and a man made of tin. What would my neighbors think?" "They'd probably call the authorities and have you locked up, that's for sure," answered the Scarecrow. "Well, we'd better not say anything," she said, turning to her husband, "not even to Dr. Gabriel." "Oh, you needn't worry about that, believe me," replied Uncle Henry. "I'm not about to say anything." Just then there was a knock at the door. Aunt Em went downstairs to see who it was. Presently she came back upstairs with Dr. Gabriel. His eyes widened as he saw the friends from Oz. Of course, Dorothy and Uncle Henry and everyone were surprised that Aunt Em would bring Dr. Gabriel upstairs, knowing he's sure to see everyone. Aunt Em, of course, knew she'd better explain. Dr. Gabriel was visiting our neighbors and was asking about Dorothy, and so I just couldn't tell a lie and told him the truth, that Dorothy was not ill, as we all thought, and that Oz was a real place, as were everyone she had talked about. Dr. Gabriel looked flabbergasted. "My goodness," he said, "my goodness, am I dreaming?" He tapped the Tin Man's side with his finger, and it made a sound like someone tapping in a drum. "Excuse me," said the Tin Man, "do you mind? How would you like me to tap your side to see if you're real?" "I'm terribly sorry," said Dr. Gabriel. "You must think me very rude, but you have to admit, you're not your common everyday person, and neither are your friends." He looks at Lion and the Scarecrow, who smile and wave meekly back at the doctor. "I'm a medical man with a reputation to maintain. I can't tell people I met a man made of tin, one made of straw, who both move and talk, along with a lion that talks. No one would ever allow me to treat them again. I'd be run out of town." "Well," said Aunt Em, "I just wanted you to know there was nothing wrong with Dorothy after all. But I'm sorry I put you in this predicament." "It's quite all right," Dr. Gabriel replied. "As a matter of fact, from a scientific perspective, this will be new for the books. While I know I can't inform my fellow professionals, I'll be making a detailed entry in my diary for some future researcher to read. By the way, if there's no objection, I would like to confide in my old professor in medical school. He's retired now, so it will be confidential. He knows me well and will not doubt my account." The doctor has been speaking rather softly, and no one answered him, as no one really heard exactly what he said. Unfortunately, the good professor, when he heard the good doctor's account, immediately phoned a good friend, the editor of the local paper. He told him briefly of this incredible story and said he was worried about the mental health of his friend, and suggested that a discreet visit by a reporter, being a skilled interviewer, could find out what was really going on with his doctor friend. Of course, this would prove to be a big mistake. The reporter, at his editor's urging, had rushed over there to catch the doctor before he left Dorothy's house, and worse, he took a photographer with him. Well, I'm sure the reader can predict what happened next. The reporter and the photographer soon arrive at the house, and finding the front door open, walk in to see everyone descending the stairs. The photographer starts taking photographs as the reporter attempts to interview Dr. Gabriel. Dr. Gabriel appears red-faced and quite flustered. "Please," he said, "no photographs. I can explain. These fellows are actors, here to do a school play in Dorothy's school, and—" But at that very moment, who should come flying through the open door but the Wicked Witch on her broomstick. She flies around the living room, scaring the daylights out of everyone as she screams in her high-pitched voice, "So, Dorothy, you thought you were safe and sound, didn't you, now that you're back in Kansas? But your scungy friends made a big mistake following you, because that opened the door for little old me. Hee 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 hee," she cackled. "Now I can torment you day and night." With that, she flew back out of the open door and up into the sky and disappeared. Uncle Henry was beside himself, pulling out a big red handkerchief and mopping his brow. Aunt Em and Dr. Gabriel were just standing there, open-mouthed, never having seen anything like it in their life. The reporter and photographer had frozen in place, completely mesmerized. Finally, the reporter gasped, "Was she an actor too? And can actors fly now? Can they defy the laws of gravity?" Dorothy and the Tin Man and the Scarecrow and the Cowardly Lion looked at each other as if to say, "How do we explain this?" The reporter yells to the cameraman, "Did you get that? Did you get her on film?" "Who?" said the cameraman. "The witch, dummy, the witch on the broomstick. Did you get her on film?" The cameraman looked down at the ground, averting the reporter's gaze. He shook his head. "No," he said, "it all happened too fast." "Darn it," retorted the reporter. "Nobody will believe this without pictures." "We could still take pictures of these fellas," he said, pointing to the Oz friends. "Nah," said the cameraman. "Sadly, they're just actors. Nobody cares about a few unknown actors dressed in funny costumes. But an actor in a witch's outfit, flying a broom above our heads and up into the sky, now that would be something else entirely." "Say, who are you calling nobody?" said the lion. "I'm the king of the forest." "Let's get out of here," the reporter said. "These actor types are a weird bunch."